New World is a game that I played at release, played for an extensive amount of time, and I enjoyed some of my time with it, and then I stopped playing. So today I figured I'd bring an expert at New World. Hey, Brian, how you doing?
Dude, I'm good, and I'm going to hopefully convince you to just update it and step into it because they are doing some really cool stuff, but we'll talk about it here, obviously.
So I hear, as a matter of fact, the idea that I got to make this video is because I listen to a lot of your videos when I'm taking my kids to school. Well, when I'm coming back from school, I usually put up like your videos on the phone because it's, a lot of your videos is just more of an audio experience. So I'll just be like, okay, let me listen to this while I'm going along. And you were talking a lot about New World, and I was like, okay, so there's a lot of things in New World that annoyed me. And I want to see if some of those things have changed. Now, I could just go and look at like patch notes, but that's boring, and you're going to have a lot more context than a bunch of patch notes. So I figured that I would bring this up to you. So New World had a massive launch, like it almost hit 1 million players, didn't quite get there, was like 960 something. I was following it very closely. Both of us were.
Yeah. To be clear, though, that's concurrency.
Yeah, concurrence. Yeah.
They roughly, when you look at industry standards based off of just concurrency alone, that accounts for 10 to 15 million players for just that concurrency number. So absolute monster of a launch.
It was a monster launch. But
the story that follows it were people that they lost players. And my argument, and we actually were talking specifically about this like months before the launch. I was like, they're going to have they're going to have a massive exodus because when people define it as that they lost players, I say they never actually had those players in the first place.
Yeah,
there's going to be degrees in which that why somebody stopped playing, but hype is a hell of a drug, and sometimes it's fun just to be a part of something.
Yeah,
and that's essentially where like the numbers probably in my mind are inflated just out of hype alone. But that's just my thought.
So I never really cared that much about the concurrent player count. It doesn't bother me. Like I've seen videos about it, particularly the Upper Echelon Gamers video, where it said that if you're playing at a certain level, then you need a certain amount of players on your server because they feed materials into the higher level guilds and so on and so forth, right? But besides that, my biggest concern was always at the start, there was the whole kerfuffle with the servers. And that was like a big broken promise, in my opinion, that they made, which was week one, they said, we're going to solve this problem. So just make a character anywhere and we're going to let you transfer servers. So week one, they said this and they did not deliver. And this was like a huge problem for me because I joined a random server and I already had like, I don't know, 50 hours into my character or something. So I didn't want it to start on another server, but I told friends of mine that got the game, look, just join any server that's available. They're going to give us the transfers and whatnot. Week one rolls around. Week two rolls around. No server transfers. Week three rolls around. No server transfers. And there was always like an excuse like, oh, we're still working on the feature. Oh, we want to make sure it's not broken. Oh, we don't want to implement the feature like before weekend because players want to play. And I was like, okay, so I think it was like week 4 or something. They finally implemented it. And then like 100 people transferred over, broke the game, broke the economy at the same time, and they shut the feature down. And that was when I stopped playing because like big problem. I want to play with my friends. I can't play with my friends. My friends aren't even playing anymore, which kind of sucks at this point. But it's like, that was a big problem. And the server structure is essentially what caused that. Now, the first question that I have is, has the server structure changed at all? Or is it still like those realms that are separated that you can't like jump realms at will? It's still the same thing?
So it has changed and it is changing and it will change. And so in terms of kind of the key frustration that you run into, that has been fixed. Everybody got like 2 free transfer tokens. You actually will have those on your account when you log in. And you can also now purchase additional transfer tokens. However, that is a short-term fix. To the longer term question is like, what about the rest of the server structure, the need for change, the queue issue in which that the game was so popular, they just had to make more and more and more servers, which ultimately we all knew was like, there's going to be this massive expanse and then there's going to be a deflation. And so they're honestly, the biggest thing that they failed at, in my opinion, is the lack of a transfer solution at launch, because that I think is a critical component. Because imagine having, hey, create your character. We know it's crazy. Imagine already having a free token so that as it settles down over the course of the weeks, you could have transferred. I think that would have gone over much smoother. And that definitely was a misstep on theirs. They've also increased server capacity, meaning the amount of people who can play on a server, and they're promising a greater level of server capacity can increase. And I'm guessing that's going to happen with Brimstone Sands. And then every time they add more zones and more landmass, it seems like that's going to be kind of their strategy, increasing the overall amount of people who can log into one specific server. And they also talked about cross server play within the dungeons, within the PvP, and within OPR. Now, cross server is not there yet.
In instance situations, you can cross server play.
Correct. And they're even hinting at bigger things in terms of that. But being that, let's say they went the Guild Wars 2 model, in which that you can just kind of play with your friends in the open world, you have to then redesign their territory structure. So from a game design perspective, it's not that that is a technological impossibility. The question is that what will they do in terms of wars and invasions and territory control if you're on a mega server? And I think that's solved obviously with landmass and systems, but that's, I think, a bigger, grander goal that they have.
Yeah.
But at the time being, like, I think there's no problem. And actually people in this game might prefer to play on a smaller server. The only issue is that then they get cut off from being able to do the dungeons and the PvP that is instance, because they have instance 3v3 arena PvP. They have this OPR, which is end game PvP 20v20 game mode, and that's currently only pulling from your specific server. And they've already talked about this is where they're going. They're working on having that being cross realm. Then that actually solves the issue of if you wanted to play on a smaller pop server with your friends and actually control the map, like with a small company, that becomes a possibility on a smaller server. And then you're not cut off from all the other content that is offered. And so
it's like to me, the bigger problem, like my intention from the start, like when I started seeing the way that people were playing the game, from the very start, I remember saying in my videos, like, I want to leave this server. The reason I wanted to leave the server I was in is because it was way too hardcore. Like, people were literally just like logging in like maniacs and just like playing the absolute crap out of the game. And I'm like, I'm level 30. Everybody's like max level. Like, I want to go to a smaller server where I can have people that are playing at a much slower pace and just have a better experience for my own play style. And I couldn't, because I was kind of like stuck on that server because I didn't want it to like reset the progress of my character. So I wanted to do that from the get-go. The problem is, like you just said, instances and stuff, which potentially the cross world thing and not cross server thing, for instances, may be able to fix, but we'll see if that is the case or not. So I don't know if that's going to be
the good takeaways that you should know is that transfers work. You should have free two
transfers.
Free that cost you nothing. And then if you want additional transfers after that, then you would buy those, which I think that's a fine model. I think it's a standard model across MMOs. And then also they've increased the capacity of which servers are capable of, with further capacity increasing. And this Thursday, I don't know when this video is airing, so if you're watching after Thursday, they are actually adding new servers to each region. EA, EU, NA West, NA East, and South America are all actually, they're now adding servers back into the game.
How did the server mergers end up working? Did they ever end up doing the server mergers?
Yeah,
because there were supposed to be some.
They've merged and scaled down. So it works that it's like, if you're the host server, then like territory control and all that it stays exactly where it is. If you're a server getting merged into a host, they basically pay you lots of coin and reimburse you for any territory that might have been lost, etc. And what ends up happening, which is really interesting, and it's one of the things that the devs have talked about trying to introduce, like wars and invasions in a practice mode or in a game mode that's outside of the kind of the actual control of the zone. Because what happens is that whenever your world is announced that it's getting merged, like if you ended up being in a world that's getting merged, you actually see wars and invasions going off more, not for control, but for practice and for fun. Like it ends up being like, oh, this is fun. We don't need to take this seriously because all this is kind of going away. And so you end up actually seeing way more engagement, and a lot of people are really enjoying the modes more because less is on the line.
So they want to implement like a battleground type system.
That's what they've talked about. And so we don't have an ETA on that as well. But Scott, actually, one of the things that I'm kind of thinking they're leaning into is I think we'll see a paid expansion announcement pretty soon. It could end up being just another year roadmap of content. But I do think that they're actually kind of getting ready to kind of get people excited again with
I think
a big marketing push and what have you.
I think that right now the best situation for them would be to stick with like a No Man's Sky type model of just let's make people happy before we ask them for anything else. I kind of feel like that's whether they do that or not. I don't know. But you mentioned gold, particularly in the terms of like, so people who get merged into, they get additional gold. What gold was always one of the problems, I feel like, particularly once the economy was broken with the transfer glitches and whatnot. Have they done anything to address the transfer glitches, or it's like, hey, the people who got the gold, they got the gold, it's whatever?
No, they removed 99.9% or 99.8% of any duped items that happen. So the economies are actually incredibly strong right now. They're very like mature economies, and so there's a lot of movement, and there is a problem in terms of the economy right now, is that there's still a few territories that literally just print money versus some territories that you're not getting any money.
I'm assuming the starting territories basically print money, because I seem to remember
Everfall, Windsward, it's like it's kind of within the central location where everybody's at, so people spend more time. So they're looking to actually address territory ownership, because like Everfall, like apparently like prints like 250 coin a week. Like 250,000 coin a week. Like it's insane. It's like you control that, you're going to be funneled in with all kinds of money.
Is it easier to make gold? Because that's another thing that was like tremendously hard to do back when I was playing. It's like there was a limited amount of quests that you could do, and then those quests end, and then there's no more source of gold. So I remember
the economy is strong.
I'd hold on to it. I would hold on to my gold and be like, no, I'm not spending anything.
No, the economy is like incredibly strong, and it's actually a lot of fun. One of the things was I was streaming the game, and I was just kind of going out and chopping trees, just for like, I was like, okay, I'm still working on trying to hit 200 on my tree chopping. So I was just kind of running around talking with chat and cutting down trees, and then I take the materials, and I'm like, all right, like I don't need them. I'm gonna go ahead and sell it, and then I was like, I just printed myself like 3,000 coin. Like it was just like, I was like, oh, and that's a lot of coin. Like that's not an insignificant amount. So it's like, oh, there's a big demand. So what's happening right now, and the reason why I would say now is a good time to jump back in, is that you have a lot of people gearing up and getting ready for the Brimstone Sands, which is the
when is that coming up, by the way?
October. So you have roughly 4 to 6 weeks, but you have people who are just like coming back. They're ready. They're excited to jump into the new content. And so now like things are just flying. Like I felt like I've got plenty of coin. Like I literally will go and say, rack up like 100,000 coin and just go on shopping sprees and just like, okay, I want this legendary. Okay, I want this new bag. And it's fun because I like fishing in this game, and I make a lot of money fishing. But it's like, that's how I made a lot of my money. And so I just have all this material, and I just kind of like sell it when I want to make it. And the money's like looking good to the market. And so I haven't actually been paying attention to the wood market whatsoever. Literally, I was like, all right, I'm just going to go do this, hang out with chat a little bit. I want to make sure that I can cut down any new materials that might be out in the desert that might require a higher level, mining and botany and all that stuff. And so I'm just like, yeah. And then, okay, go to the market. And I'm like, holy crap. And so
that's a lot of money.
Doing it again. I literally stayed longer. I was going to wrap up stream. I was like, all right, I'll sell this stuff. And I guess I'll
go chop some more trees.
I go, well, I was going to wrap up, but I'm sorry, guys. Let's just go back and cut down some trees again and start just like, and I was just like, this is great. Cause I find the game to be incredibly relaxing as an MMO. Yeah. It doesn't require, it's like, you don't log in with a set of chores or like all these things that you have to do. So I always kind of find my playtime in New World is very organic. Like I log in, I might have a goal. I might say, you know what? I really want to run this dungeon. And then while like, I'm like, hey, let's get, because they have a group finder now. So you can actually like say, hey, I would like to run the,
but is it automatic? Does it automatically?
No, and thank goodness. Like you'll appreciate, like the dungeons in this game are so magnificent that if they brought in matchmaking, it would ruin the dungeons.
I have a very specific question in a bit, not yet, that revolves around dungeons. That is going to be a deal breaker. That's going to be a deal breaker. But so you're saying there's a group finder, so it's a manual group finder, kind of like Party Finder in 14 then, or a group finder in WoW.
Yeah. And they've even that is very good feedback. My feedback on their Party Finder, it's a passable system. It does the job. But then I go, hey, go play Final Fantasy 14 and check out their Party Finder, because the Party Finder is right now exclusive for the dungeons. But they've already said, hey, we're going to open it up so that you can make Party Finder listings for any of the content, PvE, gathering, chilling. Like, it's like, I was like, just make it to where I can tell you what I'm doing and then you guys can decide to jump in if you want to join me.
Okay, so because like before that, I remember when I wanted to do dungeons, I'd be like in chat just like spamming, hey, anybody need a tank for this dungeon? Anybody need a tank for this dungeon? I'd just be like spamming chat nonstop trying to get into a dungeon group. Is tanking still like the most requested role? Tanking and healing, I'm assuming?
Yeah, that's going to be how it is. They actually, when you
which one though, tanking or healing?
Oof. I've been doing healing. Like that's what I've been kind of leaning into, and I'm having a lot of fun with it. And I have within our company, we have like 3 people who are like, I'm a tank. And I'm like, cool. So I haven't felt a need to tank. So I feel like the healing is kind of the more important role for me. But overall, I think in chat, I end up like, honestly, we end up doing the duty, a group finder more for DPSs than we do for healer or a tank. Because we've already kind of like, oh yeah, we're all hanging out.
Because like I want to play a tank. I like tanking a lot. The biggest problem is like you get knocked around. The actual body collision was kind of a little bit of a problem that I remember being annoying as hell. Be trying to get aggro and there's like 3 people just like smacking the monster and I'm like, I can't get to it. My sword's too small.
I think the only time you'll see the body collision now is when you're PvP flagged. So if you're in PvP, you'll feel that. In PvE,
So they actually just straight up removed body collision in that PvE situation.
Yeah,
like
they also removed
we told them
degradation of gear and dungeons and stuff. So it's like, one of the things. Well, like the thing that I would say, like the reason why I'm so bullish and so excited for what they're doing is that the devs are listening, and then they get it together once a month. And they talk about what's coming next, and they also take in like, hey guys, this is what we see y'all are talking about on the forums, and we're gonna talk to you guys about that, and this is what we put in the PTR. Would you guys let us know if like are we in the ballpark of what we're talking about? So it's a very collaborative development experience.
One thing bothered me, like, but it's not like a big deal. But one thing, I think I was watching like the Asmongold reaction. I wasn't even paying that much attention to it, but I remember there was a developer there. And he seemed like he was super bored. Like, I don't want to be here. He was like, so yeah, we did this thing. And it's like, we hope the players like it. And I was like, wow, dude. I mean, come on. Are you excited for this? You definitely don't sound like it. I think it was the latest one.
Some devs, and it's like, yeah.
They just don't have like a camera presence. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah. And that's like, you when you come to the developers, like, you're going to get a wide range. Like, I'm a very, excited, extroverted developer. And then I work with people who I'm like, yeah, just never put them on camera. Like don't even like, no. Let them write up they'll write up great notes, but they're not going to be like, energetic about it.
Another big thing that bothered me a lot, crafting. Have they changed anything in regards to crafting, like how easy it is to level up? Because I remember I was trying to level up something and I went into like a forum to try and figure out like what's the most optimal way of leveling this up. I just want to level this up. And the answer that I got back was something in the lines of, okay, craft 56,000 of this thing, this worst possible, like super cheap thing because the material is easy. And I was like, wait, 56,000? Like what?
Yeah. So there's good news. And yes, they've addressed some of that, but the next update, the Brimstone Sands update, actually looks to address more of that, where they've eased different curves and what have you. So you're not necessarily spamming. Can you still spam something? Yeah, I'm sure. But there is a better curve to it. And then with the next update, you actually get a first time crafting bonus for each time you craft something that you haven't crafted before as a part of your leveling experience.
Oh,
and so far the PTR has been very positive on that.
That is very good. Yeah. That is
meaning like,
very
good. And the question I have, I haven't tested it out yet, but the question I have is that if you craft one of everything, does that get you to cap? Because if it does, then there's an incentive for you to chase that extra bonus. Or you can hard craft something and grind on it if you wanted to. But the only crafting I've really invested in is cooking. I haven't yet invested in the other crafts. And once I heard about this bonus that's coming in, I was like, I'm gonna wait till that's where I'm like stockpiling all these materials.
That's
now,
a good idea.
So that when October hits, it's like
because like one of the things that I was really enjoying doing in New World was like, okay, so I want to mine things now, but first I got to level up. I forget which was the crafting thing that gave you the thing that you would craft pickaxes. I think it was a journeyman something. I forget what it was, but there was something that would allow you to craft pickaxes and other tools. So I'm like, okay, so before I start doing this mining run, I want to make sure that I level up my pickaxe as much as I can. And then I would level up the mining. And then I'm like, okay, so now I have more materials. Let's level up the thing. I was trying to basically be self-sufficient. And what I realized as I had done enough of it, is that they let you do that up until like a certain level, and then after that, it just becomes completely and absolutely prohibitive. Where I was like, okay, it's impossible to level up all of these things. At least back when I was playing. I mean, it's not actually impossible, but it would be tremendously, the amount of investment of time that you would have to put into it would be completely prohibitive, like not reasonable at all. And that's another thing that kind of like burned me out. It's smoother
now.
A
much smoother process with that, namely because the economy is working, and so that there's actually way, like, if you wanted to be really shrewd about it, you could actually really then challenge yourself to like, can you level up for profit, like without like having kind of any kind of negative impact. But they've also kind of cleaned up some of the material refinement processes, so there's just like essentially you're not necessarily like getting kind of stuck on, oh, I don't have this material, and then feeling like you have to either go purchase it. So they've eased it. Could it be better? I think yes. I think one of the problems when it comes to end game crafting is that it feels like to get that best in slot, because there's actually multiple best in slots, because it really depends on how you want to build out your character, which is actually exciting, rather than it's like, oh, here's the one piece that you need. But being that within crafting, you can make best in slot gear. It is seemingly a little bit too RNG driven, so that like, I think I would love to see, there is ways to refine it, but I hope that as they continue to refine that system, we see a little bit more control brought into crafters who really pour themselves into the craft itself. But crafting, I think, is actually a strong advantage this game has. And it's one that, based off of everything they're talking about what's coming, because we're getting these new concepts called ultimates, like these rune stones, crafters are a part of that. Like, it's not like you just have to go farm the hardest content to get a rune stone. Crafters are heavily engaged in that system. And that makes me happy, because like any system that kind of just puts crafters off to the side, I think is usually ends up meaning it's got a short life. Yeah. But if I can sit here and have an investment that in my character that I want to, if I just want to be a crafter in this game, I can still get awesome gear. I can still do all these things just by participating from an economic perspective.
Okay, and now for the really big question, the deal breaker, the most important question for me. Back when I was playing the game, and you kind of already spoiled the answer a little bit, but I want to like build this up for people watching the video. Back when I was playing the game, in order for you to participate in a dungeon, there was this consumable item that was required in order for you to enter the dungeon, which kind of really sucked, because basically it meant that there was always a limited number of dungeons that you could run at any given time, and you being brought into a dungeon was an investment by the part of other people because they crafted the key, or maybe you crafted the key and you're the one recruiting. You would need to craft a special key. This key was then bound to the person who crafted it. You couldn't even buy the key in the marketplace. Yeah. You had to craft it. You had to own the key. Now, they would give you like one of these keys as you were doing the main quest line all the way up into the final dungeon, but that'd be about it. And then you would go into the dungeon, and the dungeons, I actually really enjoyed doing the dungeons. Problem was, you would always have to convince people, hey, I'm going to be an asset to your group. I'll help you, and we'll actually complete this dungeon. People would then be asking for certain item levels or certain like levels of players or whatever, always being more on the uppity up than, sometimes you'd be like, oh, level 20 dungeon. Okay, are you level 50? Okay, I want level 50 players for my level 20 dungeon or whatever. So those keys were required, and that was like a huge problem for me. So tell me, what's the key situation now?
So the keys have been completely removed, and how they transition that is that the keys turn into the treasure coffers that drop that dungeon's gear. So if you actually just stockpile the keys, you ended up just having a really great day when that update kicked in this summer, and so that all went away. So there's no keys to do dungeons. There is a limiting number of dungeons that you can do and can run, and that's 15 normal dungeons a day, which generally speaking, right now it takes us about
15 a day.
Generally speaking, that takes us about an hour to do a dungeon. So a normal dungeon. So like if you're going to play for 15 hours and only do dungeons? Then you might run into that cap. So I haven't felt any pressure or problems.
It's like
with
I still don't understand, particularly if you're going to put 15. See, the reason I find that ridiculous, like if you're going to put 15, do you get gold from dungeons or something? You don't, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh, you do?
You get all kinds. Dude, dungeons. So
but
rewarding.
You didn't used to get gold from dungeons, or am I mistaken?
If they didn't have that when you were playing, they added it quickly soon after. They actually scaled down the amount of coin that you can get, and they added in new ways of getting
so
bonus coins
now I
from
understand. Now I understand why they have to limit it, because if you're getting gold from dungeons, then yeah, you have to kind of limit, because there's gonna be some degenerate that is just gonna be running dungeons nonstop for
all
gold
day. And then they added in so then after you left, they added in what's called the mutator system. So you can kind of think of it as M plus. So it takes the normal dungeon and levels it up to max plus, and then you keep leveling it up. And then they have modifiers that get dropped in on you, and they make it even more challenging. And then they put even better rewards within the different modified dungeons. Right now, there's only two dungeons that have yet to receive the modification treatment, and that's the first two, the Starstone and the Amarine. But we're hoping that the next update is the Starstone getting mutated, because it's such a beautiful dungeon. The dungeons in this game are phenomenal.
Yeah, I like the dungeons like that. See, that's the reason. That's another one of the reasons why. Because like we've talked about a lot of reasons. I couldn't play with my friends because they stopped playing on account of the fact that we couldn't be on the same server. That's one reason. The crafting system was a pain in the ass to level up if you were trying to do it by yourself. That was another reason. The economy of the game was, for starters, it was super hard to get gold, and then on top of it, the economy was broken when the busted transfers happened. And the other thing was like, that's my favorite thing to do in MMOs. Like we talked about plenty of times about, I wish 14 would implement something like a Mythic Plus system, right? So it's like, that's one of my favorite things to do in MMOs. And the fact that the dungeons were limited, it was always like, there's going to be the day where I'm not going to have that. And it's like, you don't even have this much content. Back when I was playing, there's not even that much content to do in the game. Why would you limit how many times I can run a dungeon? That's completely stupid. I don't understand. So it's like the dungeons was one of the biggest
dungeons
things
too. So it's not just so they've added in, we've currently got 2 brand new dungeons, and they've taken some of the existing dungeons and mutated them as well. So taking them up to level cap, even if they were a lower level dungeon. And then so with those things in place, now there is a weekly limiter on mutated dungeon runs that you can do, and that's set to 25. So over the course of a given week, which resets on Tuesday, kind of standard reset time, you can do 25 of the mutated dungeons, and the dungeons get mutated up to level 10. So that you take that dungeon, and then at the higher level you get it in the mutation, the more modifiers that get thrown, and the modifiers change each week, and so do the dungeons. So right now there's always 2 mutated dungeons that are up, and then as they add in more dungeons, we might see that move to a 3, giving you more choice as well. So we just got a new dungeon this summer, and then even in the fall we're getting a new one as well. And they're some of the best designed fights and content. They are really interesting. They do take a while. They're not they're not match made to where you're like, you can clear this out in 10 minutes. It's like, you're there. Like this is something you're doing. You got multiple different kinds of bosses. Knowing what you're going into will give you an added advantage. Like some dungeons are like, oh, that's Angry Earth. So if you go and equip perks that are going to hurt that enemy, you're going to do much better. So matchmaking would be a nightmare, because then all of a sudden you would say, well, why are you geared for for this? It's like they're strong against that, and then then you get kicked, and then everybody's like, oh, such a toxic environment. But it's good that they have it with Group Finder, because it ends up being a really nice tool, and it's so much easier to join in a group. And we've been doing dungeons way more as a community on our end, because it's just, because
there's no negative side to doing a dungeon anymore. There used to always be like a negative aspect of running a dungeon.
It basically, people with that idea, they ask the question, is like, do I really have an hour? So if the answer is no, then go do something else out in the open world. And that's where my fear is that, and what I don't want New World to become, is just another instance simulator. Just
I get it.
WoW and 14 clone, where it's like you just kind of log in, you idle in town, and then it pops, and you go do this, and then you bounce. And so far they haven't gone in that direction, but because they've incentivized more open world exploration and fights like in the open world, and bosses. Open world bosses are very can be very valuable to you if to go farm for a specific drop.
Do they still have those crazy chest runs that I remember Asmongold would do that all the time? Like, I don't like those at all. Dude.
Well, they're actually you don't have to, but they're absolutely fun if you want to participate in it. That's what I've been calling our open world raid, is that you have a couple different things that are all in the open world, and you just get into big parties and you just go beat down big, powerful enemies, and it's
No,
a
but
lot
it's
of
like
fun.
what I'm talking about. Like what they would do is they actually bypass the enemies and like glitch them and stuff, and then just
Oh
like
yeah,
open chests
that doesn't
from.
happen. No, no,
It
no.
doesn't
No,
happen
people.
anymore.
No, you still go for the chest, but you like go through and you just tear down and you fight the
Okay,
bosses, and they have
so
the events.
I've
It's very
see that stuff I like because I did that back in like
I
I
actually
was
have some
still
footage
super.
of it. It's insane. It's
I
like
was
it is
super.
addictive.
I was super low level. It was that like Cutlass Pirate Cave, whatever, in Cutlass Keys or whatever it's called. And you would go in there, and it's like level 25 elites or level 30 elites or whatever it was, and you just like circle around with a big mob of people, and everyone would just be killing stuff left and right. Like that was a good time. I enjoyed that. What I don't enjoy
Yeah.
is like whenever someone's just rushing through, skipping all the mobs, and then they're just like, oh, and now if I jump over here in this location, the mobs glitch out, reset aggro, I open the chest, and then I go to the next chest. Like that to me is like boring. Like I hate doing that. I think that's
I think I saw a video of one guy who was still kind of doing it, but like no, you see what's called they're called trains. So
Yeah.
you'll see like in chat, like, hey guys, we're gonna do a train and we're starting here. And so these kind of end up being like these world tours where you
Yeah.
go from like all these like the hardest, like at level 60, you're actually doing like these are level 66 bosses and elites and all these like open world dungeons that end up constituting like a raid in a way. And so you end up having and that's the thing that's always different because sometimes it's like, hey, it could be just 5 of us or 10 of us that are attempting this. And sometimes it's like, hey, we got 25, 35 people here. And yeah, it's much easier, but it's still fun because it's just like there's so much stuff going off. You feel like you're just a part of this great community. And that's something where I don't participate in a train all the time, but I have a couple and they're just a blast. And it's fun as a option of things to do.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
why
yeah.
stepping into the game is always very organic. I always come in with no expectation of what I'm going to do. And I always leave going like, whoa, that was so unique. It was, it was always a new experience, even
See,
if it ends up just being fishing,
That's why I was always really positive. Like I actually covered this back then. I wasn't doing like the MMO channel and the main channel. I actually covered a lot of this in the main channel. And I always had people like that were upset at me because like, why are you enjoying this game? The game is terrible. And I'm like, yes, the game has problems, but I was still having fun. I was still enjoying it. So I would like stream the game and I'd just be like, oh, let me chop some trees. Let me do some things. Because like you said the word earlier, it was organic. It's organic fun.
Mm-hmm.
So now the final question is, what is the new player experience like? So because there's a lot of people that I feel like probably missed out on the train and they might just jump into a server and everybody's like max level. Like, is there incentives for higher level players to help the lower level players besides if they're friends or something, right? Like, is there an incentive for a random stranger to help like a low level player?
we were playing last night. We have we've seen both a lot of new and returning players. So right now there isn't this gap in player levels. There are a lot of people back in and playing, either new characters or returning or restarting. Like it's a wide range in that regards. So we were playing last night with the new guy, and so he just joined our Discord. We were all hanging out, having a good time. He was invited in from his friend who is a high level. And we're all teamed up with him actually in Brightwood. He's like in the 20s and we're all like doing Brightwood Isle and we're doing some new points. There's this weird story that's going on. Not going to spoil anything, but there's this faction called the Varangian Knights, which is kind of like a NPC player faction, meaning they have our weapons and skills and they've been slowly patch over patch taking over the island. So
that's really cool. I like this type of stories.
There is a progressive story that's going on, and so you kind of every new update kind of has a new chapter where they're like, now they've invaded this zone and they have a new fort that you have to go and they have notes and stuff, so you can kind of read the letters that they're plotting, and so there's a mystery that we're kind of solving. Anyway, like that being said, is that we're out there doing Brightwood. I'm a level 60, bunch of other level 60s. But the enemies are fun, and we're all getting rewards. We're getting chests. We're getting weapon experience. We're getting experience. Like if you weren't level 60, let's say we had a level 58, they're still leveling up as well. You're not punished for helping low level players, but the low level player felt kind of guilty. They're like, I don't want you guys, like, no, I want you all to make sure that you're having fun. Don't bend over backwards on my account. And I was like, this is some of the most profitable nights for me when I help a low level player, because that puts me into these zones where I'm getting these chests and I'm getting materials and I'm going to go make 20 or 30 grand. So basically me teaming up with you for a night is almost a guaranteed legendary for me. And that's just because I'm going to get so many rewards because there's just so many chests all in these areas that I'm not going to go to on my own. Like And so it ends up making a fun evening for me because it's fun to be in these zones. The zones are so beautiful. The world is so beautiful. I don't care where we are.
But
we're just we're having fun.
Doesn't it end up being a situation where like you're level 60, you're damn near one-shotting most of the lower level mobs or something like that?
It depends on what kind of area you're in. If you're in a low level spot and you're not in an elite zone, then yeah, I'm probably one-shotting the mobs. But what we do in that case is we actually then take the lobby to an elite zone. So they're getting really good experience and a challenge. And we're also being challenged, and it's not one-shotting the stuff.
So you're basically hurting tons of elites and you're AoEing them down, I would imagine.
Well, it's kind of risky, even at even at level 60, trying to do like a group of 25 elites. Like you can still get overpowered. It does that many elites. It is risky. They are dangerous. You can a level 60 can easily solo a 25 elite. A level 60 is going to struggle once you got 2 or 3 with those elites.
Interesting.
So there is hey, the elite zones are designed even at level 60, even no matter what level 35, 45, etc. Like it says 5 people, and that's the recommendation. Like it's not, oh, we recommend 5 people, but you'll do just fine. No. This isn't WoW. This isn't 14. This is you want to go challenge yourself and have that, that Dark Souls experience. Go solo in one of those elite zones. By all means. Like, can you do it?
No,
sure,
I couldn't. I remember when I tried, I usually I'd wait for a train to pass by and then I'm like, okay, I'm joining in. Let's go, guys.
Picking up. Right. But it's like if you maybe had the right potions and the right cooldowns and the right perks, like you could, there is a strategy to it. So like people will challenge themselves to that, but no. Like elites and elite zones, even at lower levels, the level doesn't make that big of a difference. The best thing that's going to keep you alive is getting out of the way, because it is an action RPG. So you dodging or blocking a hit is more beneficial than just like attack. Yeah. So there's sometimes depends on the elites. Like you might be like, because the worst elites in the game are the vines. Those are the absolute, nobody likes those things because they suck so bad. And whenever you run into those, even with a group of 60s, everybody's like, okay, all right, guys, good luck to everybody here, because those things are mean.
All right, but that's pretty much all I had. You actually convinced me. I'm gonna try it out at some point again. But it was mostly the dungeons is pretty much the make or break for me, because the limiting dungeon aspect was the biggest negative thing that the game had. Like there were a lot of negative aspects, but limiting the amount of times that I can do a dungeon was literally the worst thing that they could have done to me. Yeah. I'm like, this is annoying, because I want to go do a dungeon now and I have to wait until someone's at the quest point that they get a key, because nobody's crafting these keys, because they can just go do chest runs.
Yeah, with the transfers and the servers and such, the one thing you might run into right now is queue time. So on Thursday, new server spins up. Maybe you want to go check out the new server. The new player experience, which is what you also asked me about as well, that is getting massively overhauled. And the nice thing is that veteran players will also be able to do the new player experience. Great story. Like honestly, cutscenes. New World actually has a really good cutscene, and they put it at the last thing in the game. Once you beat the Tempest, the dungeon, and you finish that story of the main base game, then all of a sudden this beautiful cutscene plays, and it sets up the future in interesting ways. I won't ruin it for you. I'm talking about holy crap, dude. I watched that because I watched it on YouTube, because I haven't beaten the Tempest the final boss in the Tempest yet. And I watched it, I go, why is this the time that they're introducing this quality of a cutscene? And they're doing the new player experience with those cutscenes, telling the story. And so it's going to be a much more narrative-driven experience come October, but you still, even as a veteran, will be able to go back and play through the narrative experience. And it's going to be really exciting for a lot of players who think that the game doesn't have a story, and they're like, oh, I don't know what's happening. But if people skip the story, then they're going to skip the story and can't do anything about it. But I would still encourage people to come back and play now, and have maybe even a 1.0 experience going into Brimstone, to see, so they can look back and say, oh man, I remember when we had it this way, and now it's now look at the zones and how they've evolved.
I think the problem with the story is that I do remember that it having a story, but I also remember a lot of the times the NPCs would be telling you things that would have no bearing on the story whatsoever. It's just it's trying to build character for these characters. The problem is you're going to move to another city. You're going to completely forget about this character because nothing really happens around them.
you're gonna like when you update and step in. Which the nice thing is that's absolutely free. There's
Yeah,
you
that's
already own the
that
game,
is the good thing. I like
cost
the
you nothing.
business model.
Same thing with your friends. Like they already have their transfer tokens. So it's like if y'all want to jump back in, one of two things. I would say like update your game and either jump in on a new server when they spin that up out there in the EU for you, if that makes sense, or jump or you know, or get with your friends and say, hey, you know what, I know we tried this last year. It's a good time to come back because we can play together. Or wait till the October update, and I'd love to know your thoughts actually on both. So one of the things I'm going to be looking forward to is after this video post, like what it was your experience as a returning player, because that's going to be more important, because I've stuck with it because I was like, I kept feeling there's something here. It just is not refined. And as they've refined it a little bit more, the picture becomes even more clear, and it makes me even more excited for what New World could potentially be one day. And so I'm happy that I'm able to convince you to kind of update your game, but I'm more excited to see what your next video is kind of after you kind of jump back in and say, like, here are the issues that I had with it. Are they resolved or are they not? I've told you, it sounds like they've resolved them, but you might take new issue with it, and that'll be curious for me, just because I always like to get everybody's opinion on it. Having a wide range of understanding of how people approach the game helps me better, at least for my content that I talk about New World, you know, in a way that is hopefully approachable.
Yep. But anyway, that's going to be it for this video, guys. There's going to be a link to all things Ginger Prime. There's gonna be all things for Ginger. It's just called you Ginger.
All the Ginger. Well, yeah, so people just kind of shorten it. And they're like, "What's up, Ginger?" I'm like, "Hey, what's up?"
But yeah, there's gonna be a link to Ginger Prime where you can find all things Brian, and make sure to check him out. What is the next thing that you're gonna be working on?
Today, actually, I'm doing a collab with Crojack. We're going to be talking about MMOs as well. Interestingly enough, like our schedule aligned where we were in the morning and he's in the afternoon. And then I might do something collaborative with Chris, but I'm working on a new returning players guide for New World, and I'm just debating, do I want to release one in September and then an updated one in October, or do I want to try to combine them? I don't know. I haven't decided yet. And then
let me tell you,
on my Dragoon controller guide. Yeah.
As someone that has a somewhat of an understanding of the YouTube algorithm, do both videos, dude. Lots of views.
Probably right. He's right. He's absolutely
you know
correct.
I'm right. You get the views
right.
now, and then you get the views in October as well. That's how it works.
I could also like promote the updated guide, you know, like in it. Like, hey guys, just know bigger changes are also right around the corner. But if you're stepping back in, yeah, I'll do that. I'll do that too. But I'm also working on the Dragoon controller guide for Final Fantasy 14, and just enjoying multiverses. I love that game. You know, Gizmo from Gremlins is stepping into the arena on Thursday, so I'm excited about that. So I usually play that at night. Like I have it on my Steam Deck. So like as I'm going to bed, I'm like, I'll do a couple matches of multiverses and then call it a night.
That's nice. Okay. Well, we'll see you in the next one. Everybody, if you enjoyed this video, hit the like button, subscribe, bell notification, all of that jazz. Check out Brian's stuff in the description. And yeah, have a good one. Peace out.
Take care.